She's a gentlewoman from Boston, never held a gun in her life. He's a former soldier, carrying the weight of a war that never quite let him go. Together, they'll ride deep into the heart of the Wild West to rescue her sister and survive a land ruled by bullets and betrayal. What's at stake isn't just gold, but a kind of love neither of them ever expected to find. Welcome to Weathered Stories. Today, I'm going to tell you the story of Emily West, a schoolteacher used to quiet days in city sidewalks, who set off into the unknown to save her kidnapped sister. On the way, she crosses paths with Jack Colton, a rough-edged bounty hunter with nothing to lose and no reason to care. Together, they'll face dangers that would break most folks. But it's out there, in the dust and distance, that a story begins, one they'll never forget. Can two strangers, lost in a world that doesn't want them, take on outlaws, rescue a loved one, and still hold on to who they are? If you're ready to see how love and honor can outlast fear and greed, hit that like button and let's begin. Boston, early evening. The creak of old floorboards and the slow tick of a wall clock were the only sounds in a quiet apartment on the second floor of a red brick building. Emily West sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a shawl, flipping through the last page of the newspaper. The room smelled like coffee and ink. The mailman knocked a little earlier than usual. A thick envelope slid through the door, worn with faded handwriting and a Mexican stamp. She opened it slowly. The handwriting was familiar. Sarah, her younger sister. The letter started out plain, but by the middle, Emily's hands were shaking. If you're reading this, I need help. Some men came by. They want something I have. I'm scared. I didn't know who else to write. Inside the envelope was an old, worn-out map. A hand-drawn X, strange markings. No return address. No date. Just a heavy, sinking feeling in her chest. Emily stood up and looked out the window. The city kept moving like nothing was wrong, but everything inside her told a different story. Sarah was in danger. She didn't know what was waiting out there at the edge of the world. But she knew one thing for sure: she couldn't stay here and do nothing. 20 minutes later, her suitcase was packed. A cup of coffee sat cooling on the table, and in her eyes, fear and resolve. The train left at sunrise. The air was damp and smelled like coal. Emily stood on the platform in her neat coat, clutching a suitcase that held everything she had: some books, a spare dress, and a photo of her and Sarah. She had never left Boston before. Never alone. The train car was packed with strangers. Men in dusty hats, worn boots, and hard voices. Women with tired eyes. Kids sleeping in laps. Some smoked. Others ate straight from the blade of a knife. Emily took a seat by the window and avoided their eyes. At first, the ride seemed almost romantic. Open land, golden fields, rolling hills. But mile after mile, it all grew rougher, dirtier, meaner. The train rocked. The seats were hard, the windows crusted with grime. A cowboy walking past muttered, "Ma'am, this ain't no place for someone like you." She said nothing, gripping the handle of her bag tighter. The car was stifling. Her dress clung to her, soaked in the smell of strangers. For lunch, she got a tin cup of salty broth and a chunk of stale bread. At one dusty stop, a group of men with rifles climbed aboard. They spoke Spanish and eyed her suitcase. Emily turned her face to the window and pretended to sleep. By nightfall, the train rumbled deep into western land. No houses anymore, just dust, fading signs, and wide open nothing. That's when Emily knew everything she'd ever known was behind her. And somewhere out there, lost in the dirt and silence, her sister was waiting. The train screeched to a stop. The crooked sign hanging from a weathered post barely spelled out the name: Havers Creek. Emily stepped onto the platform and nearly lost her footing. The boards were uneven, the ground beneath them dry and cracked with dust. Around her, just a few rundown shacks, a store or two, a church without a bell, and a saloon with a broken window. This town wasn't alive. It was barely hanging on. She walked to the building with a faded sign, Sheriff's Office. Inside, a man in his 50s sat slouched behind a desk, eyes dull with years of waiting on nothing. He looked up when she entered, but didn't bother to rise. "You the sheriff?" Emily asked, gripping the map in her hands. "Been him since old Morgan got shot behind his barn," he muttered, reaching for his coffee. She told him everything: Sarah's letter, the map, the fear. He listened, furrowed his brow, leaned back in his chair. Sarah West? Huh? Yeah, we knew her. She was with a Mexican fella, Miguel, I think. Folks said they headed into the hills. Ain't heard a word since. Left? Emily's voice wavered. Sarah wouldn't just leave without writing me. She was scared. She asked for help. The sheriff shrugged. Round here, folks don't write much, especially when gold's involved. And you, miss, best not go poking where it ain't safe. These parts ain't ours no more. The smart ones left. The rest, well, we all make our choices. He paused as she turned to leave, then added without looking. If you're hell-bent on going, find Jack Colton. He knows the trails. Knows the people too. But be warned, he don't help for free. Emily stepped back out into the street. Just stung her cheeks. She felt eyes on her, curious, judging, tired. Laughter echoed around a corner. A child cried in the distance. Everything felt foreign. But inside, she knew one thing with painful clarity. Sarah hadn't left. Sarah was in trouble. And Emily wasn't leaving without her. The saloon on Main Street looked like it was held up by habit and whiskey alone. Peeling shutters, a faded sign, and a thick smell of smoke, old liquor, and dust that had settled into the wood like memory. Emily stepped in, clutching her bag tight. The room was loud, laughter, shouting, the sharp slap of cards on a table, and a broken-down piano being punched more than played. Several men turned to stare. She didn't belong, and everyone knew it. At the bar stood a man. Tall, weathered, worn leather jacket, rifle slung across his back. He drank in silence, eyes fixed on the mirror in front of him. His face was rough, wind-beaten, scarred in more ways than one. He hadn't looked at her, but he'd already sized her up. Emily approached. Excuse me, are you Jack Colton? He turned slightly, glanced past her. Who's a skin? The sheriff sent me. I need help. I'm looking for my sister. Her name's Sarah West. She might have been with a man named Miguel. Jack lowered his glass. I ain't the law, and I sure as hell ain't a tracker. Don't much care to be found, either. I can pay, she added quickly. I have a map. An old one. It belonged to Sarah. I think that's why she was taken. That word map caught him. He looked down as she pulled it from her bag. Said nothing, but his eyes shifted. Interested now. But his voice stayed cold. Maps are funny things. Sometimes they lead to gold. Other times, to graves. And you, miss, you look like you've got no idea which one you're chasing. I know what I came for, she said, steadier than she felt. My sister. He nodded, turned back to his drink. Then find someone who still believes in lost causes. That ain't me. But as she turned to leave, he watched her go. Not like a drunk sizing up a stranger. Like a man who'd seen trouble before. And knew it had just walked through the door. Emily didn't make it far. Just a few steps outside the saloon before she stopped. The dry air pressed heavy on her chest, and her eyes stung, not from the dust, but from something deeper. She knew there was no turning back. And ahead, just dirt, silence, and a fight she couldn't win alone. She turned around and walked right back in. The saloon quieted some. Folks had already figured out this woman wasn't here to drink or disappear. Jack was still at the bar, back turned. Emily stepped closer and placed the map down beside his glass. The paper crinkled on the warm wood. Find her, she said softly. The map's yours. But only after we bring her back. He didn't answer at first. Looked at the map, then at her. And you think I'm going to chase after a bunch of scribbles on old paper? I think you're not the kind of man who works for wages. He gave a dry laugh. Bitter. I haven't really lived in years. Just been moving. Emily lowered her eyes, then looked back up. I don't care who you are. I need Sarah. I don't know how to shoot. Don't know how to hide. But you do. And what if she don't want to be found? He asked, squinting. What if she ran off with that Mexican fella and couldn't care less about letters? I've seen that before. Some folks leave, just like that. No, Emily said. She was scared. You could feel it in every word. She didn't run. Jack sighed. Reached for the map, ran a finger across the lines. All right. Say I find your sister. Then what? You give me the map, head back to Boston, and I go chase ghosts in the hills? I'll give you the map, and I'll leave if that's what you want. He studied her face. No flirtation. No lies. No gold lust. Just conviction. All right, Miss West. Deal's a deal. But remember this, out here, everybody loses something. Sometimes more than they bargained for. He folded the map and tucked it into his jacket. Meet me at the stables at sunrise. If you're not late, we ride. Emily nodded. It wasn't exactly the answer she hoped for, but it was a chance. Maybe her only one. The day turned hot fast. The air hung thick over the land like smoke. Jack rode ahead, tense, hand never far from his revolver. Emily trailed behind, struggling to stay steady in the saddle. Her horse moved slow, kicking up dust as they wound through the narrow canyon trail. We'll circle that rock, Jack called back. Creek's on the other side. We'll rest there. They never made it. The first shot cracked from up high. A bullet smacked the rock next to Emily. She screamed and ducked. Jack was off his horse in a blink, shoving her behind a nearby boulder. Down. He barked, drawing his gun. The canyon lit up, shouts, rifle fire, boots pounding stone. Two of McCoy's men dropped from the ridge, another fired from cover. Jack shot twice. One of them tumbled, yelling. Another bullet flew wide. Dust clouded the air, stinging his eyes. McCoy's, Jack muttered through his teeth. You've got more than the sheriff on your tail. Mississippi, somebody wants that map real bad. How'd they even know? Emily whispered, crouched behind the rock. News like that spreads faster than prairie fire, especially when gold's involved. He reloaded, fired again, this time toward the ridge. Silence followed. The shooters backed off. A moment's breath. Run. Now. See that break in the rock? Go. Emily nodded. They sprinted toward a dark gap at the canyon's base, an old mine shaft, half collapsed, half forgotten. Jack shoved her inside, checked behind them. No one followed. Just dust. And tension. Inside, it was cool and dark. They pressed against the wall, listening. Distant voices echoed outside, then faded. Jack looked at her. Now do you get what we're up against? Emily nodded. She didn't ask anything else. The mine tunneled deep into the rock, a narrow, damp corridor swallowed by darkness. The air smelled like rot, earth, and rusted iron. Near the entrance, Jack found an old lantern. When he lit it, the faint glow pulled out the shape of crooked beams and rusted tracks barely holding together. Are we safe? Emily whispered. For now, Jack said, settling onto an overturned mine cart. Dogs won't catch our scent down here. But the air ain't exactly friendly. He pulled out the map and spread it across his knees, the lantern casting a warm light over the old lines. Emily stepped closer, her hands trembling from fear and exhaustion. It was the first time she'd really looked at the map, every mark, every faded line, every drawn X. Look here, Jack pointed to a spot on the paper. This ain't just directions. This is old mining code. Right there's the shaft. There's the creek. And this, he tapped it. This is the vein. A rich one, if it's real. But, Emily glanced down. Sarah never said anything about gold. Just that she was scared. Exactly, Jack nodded. Which means she knew. Or at least sensed it. And if that Miguel guy was with her, maybe he knew something too. Maybe he found something. Then vanished. You think they took her for this map? I think someone's been after this thing long before your sister ever saw it, he said. Stuff like this doesn't just sit around waiting to be found. Somebody's probably already died over it. And now that you're carrying it, you're next on the list. Emily gripped her hands together. I thought it was just a strange letter. A call for help. I didn't know I was dragging us into something dangerous. Danger's the least of it. Jack looked up at her. What matters is whether your sister's still alive. If she is, they're keeping her for a reason. Which means we've got a shot. Silence fell again. The slow drip of water echoed in the dark. Somewhere ahead was the truth. Maybe gold. Maybe something worse. But for Emily, only one thing mattered now. Finding Sarah. Before it was too late. The mine felt frozen in time. The lantern had long gone out, leaving just a faint thread of starlight coming through a crack in the caved-in ceiling. Jack sat with his back against the wall, rolling a bullet slowly between his fingers. Emily huddled nearby, wrapped in her shawl. The silence stretched out until, finally, Jack spoke, without looking at her. I used to believe in maps. She turned toward him. It was 10 years ago. My brother and I found one. An old Spanish vein. Folks said the gold still ran deep in those walls. So we went. 4 of us. Only I came back. And a sack full of worthless stone. He exhaled, deep and heavy. My brother died out there. And the gold? Cursed. Not cause of magic. Cause of what it does to men. Emily didn't say anything. She just watched him. All the sarcasm, the cold edges in his voice, gone. What was left was a man emptied out by time and grief. Haven't chased gold since, he added. Just surviving. She spoke softly. Thank you. For staying. Jack finally looked at her. For the first time, no mask, no walls. Maybe you're the first one in a long time who asked me to save someone, not kill someone. They didn't speak after that. Just sat there. Two strangers. Not so much strangers anymore. By morning, they were back on the trail. The air was crisp, the sky clear, but unease hung heavy. Jack rode ahead, rifle in hand, eyes sharp. Emily followed silently. In just one day, something in her had shifted. She was quieter now, harder. The old wooden bridge stretched over a deep ravine. Every step the horses took made the boards groan and creak. Jack slowed, glanced back. Keep moving. We can't linger here. He had barely taken a few steps when the sharp crack of a rifle split the air. Another shot followed, slamming into the plank just inches from Emily's foot. Ambush! Jack shouted, diving to the side of the bridge. 3 figures burst from the brush on the far bank, faces hidden, rifles raised. Emily's horse reared. She tumbled to the ground, scrambling behind a beam for cover. Jack fired first. One man dropped. The second ducked back. The third flanked left, creeping around to get behind them. Emily! Jack tossed her a spare rifle. Cover me. Her hands were shaking, but she caught it. Raised it. Everything inside her tightened. She pulled the trigger, once. The man fell. Silence. Jack turned, breathing hard. You just saved my life. Emily didn't say anything. She sat there, staring at her hand. It still trembled, but she'd hit her mark. She'd done it. Zolo's men, Jack muttered. That confirms it. They know we're close. He walked over and offered a hand to help her up. First shot's always the hardest. But you didn't miss, Emily. She nodded, eyes wide, not just from fear or pain, but from a new strength she hadn't known she had. The village was tucked into the hills like it had always been there. No fences, no guards. Just the smoke of campfires, soft chanting in the distance, and watchful eyes hidden in shadow. Jack rode in slow, calm, like he belonged. Emily gripped the reins tightly, nerves on edge. She'd never been in a place like this. An old man stepped forward. His skin was dark as worn leather, his face lined deeper than time. He looked at Jack and said quietly, You came back. Just for answers, Udo, Jack replied, dismounting. The woman we're looking for, Sarah. Have you seen her? The elder didn't speak. He pointed to the earth, then the sky, then south. Emily didn't understand, but Jack nodded. She's alive. They're keeping her in the old fort. Zolo's fort. What? Emily stepped closer. Zolo? Yeah, Jack said. He ain't military anymore. Bought himself a private army with gold and fear. If Sarah's in his hands, then he knows about the map. Emily shook her head, stunned. He used to visit our house. He sat at our table. He knew how kind she was. He knew she'd never hurt anyone. Jack's voice softened. That makes his betrayal even filthier. The silence returned. Only the snap of firewood and the steady thump of Emily's heartbeat filled the air. Now they had a direction, and a face to put to the danger. One she once trusted. Zolo's fort stood like a scar on the land. Cracked stone walls, soaked with dust, sweat, and something colder, fear. Inside one of the rooms, behind a heavy, bolted door, Sarah West sat on a rough wooden chair. Her wrists were tied. Her lips were dry. But her eyes, those held nothing but quiet defiance. The door creaked open. Zolo walked in, neat as ever, dressed in a clean shirt and polished boots. He took his time sitting down across from her. You could have left by now, Sarah, he said softly. But you're still waiting on her. Emily. Foolish. She'll come, Sarah said, her voice hoarse. She doesn't quit. She's not like you. Zolo chuckled. I didn't quit. I learned. This world belongs to the strong. Maps, gold, power, they weren't made for people who write letters back to Boston. You were my father's friend, Sarah said. He believed in you. Thought you were a good man. And he died broke, Zolo replied, leaning back. While I'm still here. Doing just fine. He stood and walked toward her. Tell me where to dig, Sarah. Your sister's not getting here. No one does. I decide who lives in this place, and who doesn't. Sarah said nothing. She stared up at him. This man who used to eat at their table. Now just a filthy shadow in polished boots. And in her eyes, there wasn't fear, only contempt. They made camp by a creek just outside the village. The night was warm, but the air felt still, too still. Up ahead stood the fort, and inside, Sarah. Jack spread the map across a flat stone, drawing lines in the dirt with a stick. East side's a wall of rock. No getting in that way. South has a trench and a machine gun post. But here, northwest tower, it's empty. Used to be a supply shack. Barely any guards now. Emily sat beside him, focused, silent. She didn't ask questions. Didn't flinch. I'll sneak in alone, Jack said. Find Sarah, bring her out through the cellar. There's a tunnel there. If we're lucky, we're out before sunrise. No, Emily said. Jack looked at her, frowning. That's not up for debate. You're not a soldier. I'm her sister, she answered, steady. If you go in, I go too. I know her voice. I know how she thinks. If she's scared, she'll trust me faster than anyone. And you said it yourself, we're running out of time. Jack was quiet for a long moment. Then he sighed and gave a dry smile. You know, you're not the same woman who walked into that saloon with shaking hands. I'm not, Emily said. And I'm not going back. He nodded. All right, but you follow my lead. One wrong step, and no one gets saved. Sitting on the sidelines doesn't save anyone either, she said. And it wasn't defiance, it was truth. They both knew. There was no turning back now. Night fell fast. They took shelter at the base of a hill, not far from the fort. Jack built a small fire, low and covered with stones to hide the light. Emily lay curled in her cloak, fast asleep. Her face was tired, but calm. Jack sat nearby, staring at the map. In the firelight, that old Spanish cross gleamed sharp and tempting. Gold. Wealth that could change everything, buy land, vanish forever, start clean. No blood. No risk. You could just walk away, a voice whispered beside him. Emily wasn't asleep after all. Jack didn't look at her. Yeah, I could. What's stopping you? He was quiet a long time, then finally said, low. I've walked past trouble plenty of times. Told myself it wasn't mine to fix. Nobody asked me to. But this feels different. Feels like if I turn my back now, I'll lose what little of me still left. Emily sat up, looked straight at him. If we leave Sarah behind, we're no better than Zolo. He betrayed us because it was easier. Is that who you want to be? Jack closed his eyes, clutched the map in both hands. No, he said finally. I don't. He tossed the map back into his bag. The fire flickered. His decision was made. Tomorrow, we go in. Gold or no gold, we're not leaving without her. Emily nodded. And in that moment, Jack Colton wasn't just a bounty hunter anymore. He was someone worth holding on to. Darkness wrapped around Zolo's fort like an old army coat. Thick, heavy, and full of ghosts. Jack and Emily crept in from the side, crawling low behind scattered rocks. At the northwest wall, they found the gap, rotting boards, cracked beams. Jack pushed them aside, opening the way. From here on, stay quiet, he whispered. One sound, and they'll nail us to these walls. They slipped inside. The air was damp and musty, laced with old powder and mold. Thin slivers of light from the guard towers barely reached the corridors. The place was too quiet. The guards weren't expecting company. Jack led the way. He knew this place from another life, when it still flew the flag. Now it felt like something poisoned. He paused at one door. Listened. Here, he whispered. He eased the bolt open. Inside, Sarah. Dust-covered, worn, but alive. Her eyes lit up. She rushed into Emily's arms. I knew you'd come, she whispered, clinging tight. It's okay. We're taking you home, Emily said, tears barely held back. But of course, it wouldn't go smooth. Outside, shouts. Someone saw movement. Then, gunfire. A bullet struck the wall near Jack. Back. Get down. He yelled, drawing his revolver. He fired, short and sharp. One man fell. More came. Then Zolo burst from the command post, yelling, Don't let him out. I want him alive. Jack knew time was up. He shoved Emily and Sarah toward a ladder. Up top, over the ridge. Horses are waiting. Go. What about you? Emily cried, grabbing his arm. I'll cover you. I'll catch up. I promise. He turned, fired 2 more rounds, then ducked behind barrels. A shot tore through his shoulder. He didn't even grunt. Blood soaked his sleeve, but his eyes stayed sharp. He knew exactly why he was staying behind. The sisters climbed to the roof, dropped over the wall, and disappeared into the night. Emily looked back one last time, just in time to see Jack, limping, making his way through a side door. Bullets flew. Voices roared. But Jack didn't stop. They reached the horses. And finally, Jack stumbled out of the dark, pale and bleeding, leaning hard on the saddle. Well, he grunted. That's your fort. Guess I do know how to be a damn hero after all. Emily choked back a sob, helping him up. You always could. You just didn't know it. They rode in silence. The sun was just beginning to rise, painting the hills in a pale orange glow. Behind them, gunfire, dust, blood, and the broken remains of Zolo's fort. Ahead, freedom. A breeze played with Sarah's hair as she held tight to the saddle. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a quiet storm. Jack barely stayed upright. The bullet had gone clean through, but blood still seeped through his shirt. Emily rode close, glancing at him every few seconds. He was pale, but stubborn as ever, not the kind of man who quits. They stopped at the base of a ridge, where the trail split south and north. Jack dismounted slowly, his movements stiff. He reached into his saddlebag and pulled out the map. The one. Old. Yellowed. The inked cross still dark despite the wear. He stared at it. Then at Emily. You know where it leads, she said softly. I do, Jack nodded. And I know I could find it. Enough gold to disappear. Start over somewhere new. The wind caught the corner of the paper, flapping it gently. But if I go after this, he met her eyes, I'll be the man I used to be. And I don't want to be him anymore. He tossed the map into the small campfire Emily had started to warm Sarah. The flames took it instantly. The lines vanished. The cross turned to ash. This your choice? She asked. No, he said quietly. This is my chance. To be someone you can believe in. Just then, high up on the ridge, a single gunshot echoed. Then silence. What was that? Sarah asked, startled. Jack listened, then spoke calmly. Zolo, falling. My guess? His own men finished what we started. Gold's a dangerous currency. Doesn't keep friends long. They didn't look back. Just turned their horses toward the open land, leaving behind the gold, the violence, the ghosts, and heading forward, together. A month passed. The sun rose slow and warm over the prairie. At the far edge of the land, where the border faded into the horizon, stood a small house. Whitewashed walls, hand-built. A barn. A horse corral. A fresh fence. Simple, but full of care. Jack sat on the porch, one leg crossed over the other. The bandage on his shoulder had faded with time. He sipped black coffee and flipped through an old newspaper. Emily stepped out with a basket in hand and sunlight in her smile. Her dress was plain. Her heart was full. Still reading about politicians who'll never set foot out here? She teased. Jack shrugged, set the paper down. Just checking if anyone's writing about 2 fugitives who ran off with a treasure map, he smirked. So far, no news. Which means we're still free. Laughter rang from the backyard. Sarah was spinning in a white dress. Tomorrow was her wedding to John, the town's blacksmith. Honest hands. A good man. And Sarah was laughing the way she hadn't in a long time. Emily watched her, heart full. Every mile, every fear, every gunshot, it had all led to this morning. And it was worth it. Just down the path stood a small wooden building with a sign above the door, Miss West School. A few kids were already running around the porch, books under arms, apples in hand. Jack stood, walked over, and gently wrapped an arm around Emily's shoulders. You think this'll last? He asked. I don't need it to last forever, she said, resting her head against him. I just need it to be real. And you're real. They stood together, watching a new life begin. No gold, just faith. And for them, that was more than enough. The porch was quiet. Jack was fixing a fence post. Inside the house, Sarah was smoothing out her wedding dress. Emily sat at the table with a sheet of paper and a fountain pen. Beside her lay a neatly addressed envelope. Mrs. Agatha Harper, Principal, Public School Number 4, Boston. That's where Emily had spent nearly 9 years of her life. Mrs. Harper was the one who gave her her first teaching book. The one who once said, "If you ever leave, write me what you find out there." Now, she was writing. Dear Mrs. Harper, you asked me to write if I ever did something bold. I came west to save my sister. And instead, I found a home. Not on the streets of Boston, but out here, in the dust, among real people and real choices. I have a school now. Small, but full of life. And a man who sees me for who I truly am. Thank you for believing in me. Yours sincerely, Emily West. She folded the letter carefully, sealed it, and set it aside. Then she looked out toward the horizon, where the morning light had already begun to rise, and the wind across the prairie felt light, like the breath of freedom. If this story touched you, if you believe love and loyalty are worth more than gold, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe for more. Until next time, take care of the ones you love, and be kind, even when the West gets wild.